Markus. How are you?
Hello, Heiko. I'm fine, thank you.
Hello, everyone, for joining for our today's Ask Me Anything session. Again,
hey, folks.
A special one with a special guest. Before we introduce him, well, we have to say happy birthday to Bill Gates today. That's why we have our background picture, right?
Exactly, yes.
I think he turns 67 or something. So, and there was Windows XP being released 21 years ago. So
21, yes.
yeah.
It was in October.
Can you remember this, Markus? It's too long. You're too young.
No. I used Windows XP very heavily, so I think I got into Windows with Windows 95. So Windows XP is I was a heavy user of it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and so I mean, what fits perfectly to this theme is that we have someone from the Microsoft company with us today. We are very glad to have Thomas Maurer with us, who is who will tell us about the things that he's doing for Microsoft, and he also shows a lot of love for PowerShell. So I think he's a perfect fit to our session. So without further ado,
a warm welcome to Thomas.
Yes, hi Thomas.
Hi Thomas. Hi.
Hello Heiko. Hello Markus. Hello. Hi. I hope you're doing fine. I almost switched to German.
Oh yeah, then
great to be here.
Yeah. Thanks. It's great to have you here. I think there are no. Not yet. There are no subtitles yet for language translation. So I think we're just going to switch to stick with English. Yeah, it's great to have you with us today. And as usual, we would just start with introduce yourself for people who maybe, I don't know if these people exist, who don't know you in the community, but yeah, let us know a little bit about your background, what you've been doing in IT.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can talk a little bit. As I mentioned, I'm working right now for Microsoft for the last, I think it's now 3.5 years, a little bit over 3.5 years, I guess. And before that, I was actually working for a Microsoft partner and a service provider before that. And that's also kind of like when I started my PowerShell journey, if you will. That was like really introducing that service provider where I built a lot of automation back then. I think that was really in a time of PowerShell version 1, or like it wasn't like the serious stuff happened then with version 2 and version 3. But that was basically like how I got into PowerShell. Like it's quite a time back. And then, so a couple of years then I did some hybrid work, a lot of Hyper-V, a lot of virtualization, a lot of Azure, worked as a cloud architect for the partner, joined them recently, like I think it was in 2019, I joined Microsoft as a cloud advocate. And what a cloud advocates do is basically create and deliver content and listen to customer and feedback. And recently in April, I switched to an engineering team for Azure Hybrid to cover our Azure Hybrid story, meaning things like Azure Stack, Azure Arc, AKS Hybrid, and things like that. And my role there is really work with a couple of strategic opportunity customers, do some field enablement and evangelism. So I'm not the classic feature PM, if you will. I'm more running a couple of different programs there and making sure that our hybrid story comes nicely together. That is really, really quickly like the business side of things I'm doing.
Very interesting. You already touched, I think, a couple of points where we'll come back to later on when it comes to questions. But this looks like a very exciting journey you had since today.
Oh, yeah, I believe so. For me, it was definitely exciting. Like there's a lot of things I like doing. Like I love to explore new technology and like especially technology which I can relate to, which helps do my job better. Like let's think about PowerShell, right? There's so many things I work with, and PowerShell really at the end, like in everything, in almost everything I do, there's some sort of PowerShell involvement. That's why I'm so excited about this. I mean, it's not that like I do the most complex things anymore, but it's still that's why I'm also very excited about this. It's because I can just use it, and a lot of people can just get their job done better with PowerShell. So that's why I'm so excited about that.
Perfect. I think that kind of leads us to the next question, Markus. What do you think?
Yeah, but before we start with the questions, just let me get to certain things. So I knew Thomas before from his blog and from YouTube, and first time I met him in person was at the PSConf this year, PSConf in Vienna. And I attended his session, how to create great tech demos and presentations. And now every time I see a presentation with browser bars or too much in the taskbar on Windows or something like that, I like to recommend, please watch the recording of this session and do your demo again.
Okay, yeah. That's a good hint. I guess we should find it right at the PSConf YouTube channel.
Yeah, it's
we can find
there's
it.
a recording exists.
Yeah. We will find it and put it into the chat. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a fun presentation. I do that one also very often inside Microsoft to share like, hey, with all like what are all the learnings, and it sometimes hurts, right? Like when you now see a presentation like and you like see these things, and it's not like it's not something which is like super magical. It's like at the end, like if you watch it, I feel like almost bad giving that talk because it's these things are so simple. But I feel like the better we can all deliver a presentation, and that makes a stronger point for technology. And so, yeah, I'm that's why I put it out there in the first place. And I mean, I'm also guilty, right? I do also sometimes a couple of things,
me too.
Which I actually mention in the blog, because sometimes it just happens or it doesn't work that way. But yeah, I feel like if you can prepare it in a certain way, it's always good to know what you're doing.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm guilty as well. So just yesterday, I used the dark theme in Visual Studio Code for a presentation, and
yeah, that's one of the points. Like for those who haven't watched the presentation, like one of the points is if you show code, use a light theme, because that's way visible. And so I always recommend to do that. I know that, like, personally, to be honest, like I'm super big fan of dark themes and everything. Like I'm like generally when I work for myself. But if you present something, usually like the light themes are a way better option for everyone to see what you're actually showing.
Yeah.
I think that's great advice. And actually, I just found the video, so the link. So I'm just pasting it in. So actually, I'm guilty of not watching it. I didn't watch it yet, so I better should, I guess. I don't have the VS Code problem yet because I'm old. I'm still showing things in the ISE, but I'm going to switch. So, but
yeah, I saw there were some awesome videos on like how ScriptRunner loves VS Code. I think I haven't watched them yet, but I saw at least that they're on your YouTube channel. So. I was guessing that you probably do the switch at one point.
Yeah, well, yeah, shameless plug. Yeah, we just published a pre-release of our extension for VS Code. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So that's something people were asking for, because it's the right thing to do, switching to VS Code, and now also for having the integration with ScriptRunner. I think it's a great thing. Okay. Markus, what's the next question?
First question. Since when you are in IT?
Oh wow. I need to calculate that. I think like I know it was Windows XP just came out. That's when I started my apprenticeship as a IT professional, if you will. Back then, I think that was like in 2003, I think. It could be 2002 when it came out, and then 2003 I think I started. That could be kind of like, I remember also when I did the interview, basically, like I was there for, like, when you do an apprenticeship, usually like you're not just doing like an interview or something, you probably go there and like work there for like 2 days, or like not necessarily work, but you're there to see if that's a good fit, and like they see if you're a good fit. And I remember then like they gave me kind of like, here's a PC, and hey, by the way, there's just Windows XP came out, like you can install Windows XP here. And that was obviously the year before, so I guess that was 2002. So that was kind of like my starting point back then. I was working for a small service, not service provider, like small system integrator, I should say, who did like Exchange installation, Active Directory for all the customers' client management, and so on. And actually, I learned a lot there. It was not just about technology, but also how to like deal with people, like how to deal with end customers and things like that, which is, I guess, an important skill.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, people. Yeah, it's technology and people, right? It's something. If it fits together, it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, should we go for the next question, Markus?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so this kind of comes back to what you kind of mentioned during your introduction. It's like, how is working for Microsoft compared to working for Microsoft partner?
Yeah, it's difficult to compare that, to be honest. Like, so if you're working for a Microsoft partner, you probably you learn a lot about how Microsoft works, how people inside Microsoft work. And then you also know what you're getting into. So there's a lot of good things. Like I like one of the when we start with the good things, which are clearly over like the most things are good things, is that you work with so many smart people. Like it's insane. Like you can't imagine like what like the meetings I am in. I'm like very often feel like the stupidest person in the meeting itself. Like I wanted to say in the room, but obviously since we have virtual meetings all the time, it's not necessarily a room. But I think that is like super smart and super helpful. That comes very strongly together. I remember like when I started at Microsoft, I came in and I knew a couple of people all the way, and they were all really reaching out to ask about, hey, like if you need anything, if you are okay, are doing fine, like if you need anything, please feel free to contact me, to ping me. I want to help, right? So those are definitely like, I mean, you also have that in small companies, but you would not expect that necessarily in large companies like Microsoft. And again, like super smart people. Like it's especially like when I speak in engineering, yeah, it's just like insane what talent is there, and so it's always it's also a challenge, but it's also like super fun to work and learn from all of them. The downside, obviously, like it's also kind of like the biggest startup at one point. Like that's what I like to call it. It's you get a lot of freedom to do. Like I think like a lot of the roles are a lot of freedom. You have obviously goals and ideas you need to work towards, but you get a lot of freedom to achieve because you get hired to like because you know how to achieve something, not like someone telling you how to achieve it, right? And I think that is, if you can deal with that, then it's super awesome. If you want to like have people like exactly telling you what you need to do, in many roles that's probably not necessarily the case, right? So it's really like you need to get your creativity on how to achieve the things in the best way, which is great. But that also makes like things obviously like in a large company sometimes a little bit difficult when you have all these processes and then find the right person, right? That's also a challenge. But again, this is like what every large company has, is like, how do I find the right person who's responsible for this specific feature, for example? How can I talk to that person? And then people are switching around. And that's a great thing, again, because you have a lot of opportunities to go inside Microsoft to like, if I'm now like suddenly don't want to work in that space anymore, there is plenty of opportunity to do something completely different, right? I could like, there's opportunities. Like we have obviously with Xbox, we have stuff, we have M365, we have the whole Azure thing, we have AI stuff. Like you could also do something in security space or whatever, like wherever your interests are, there's a good it's highly likely that there is somewhere a chance for you to get in if you really want to do it. And so you never know, like, are people moving around after a couple of years and so on. But yeah, I enjoy it.
Sounds great.
That's interesting, because I would say from the outside, of course, Microsoft is this huge, gigantic company, but then again, I guess inside you still have this, as you said, kind of startup, small teams responsible for topics where they can do things according to what they think is the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. So especially like if you think about, like, I can talk about obviously the space where I'm in, like with Azure Arc and Azure Stack. At the end, you're like spread across, I think like Arc itself is spread across like 3 different organizational parts of Microsoft, if not 4, just the way we are structured, and like Arc is everywhere a little bit. So they come together on a very high level, but the teams underneath, they work like this cross-team collaboration, which is also something Microsoft internally pushes very hard on. It's actually very much there, right? So the teams really, like for the Arc side of things, especially for all the hybrid stuff we do, we really come together as kind of like one team. Even though we report to different people, we're really coming together. Like we have people from different sides of engineering, marketing, again, different like organizations in engineering. So that's super interesting.
Okay, cool. Very, very interesting. Very insightful. So let's go to the next question now, Markus. What do you think?
Yeah, sure. Speaking of freedom and time, so how much time do you have writing for your own blog now you're working for Microsoft?
Not more than I had before. that I can say. I mean, to be honest, the blogging thing for me, like after a while, it became kind of like an automated thing. Like, okay, well, I worked on this, and then I felt like this is a good thing for me to know. So, but that's also a good thing for others to know. So I basically like quickly write that into a blog and then put it out there. And what also happened over the years, I think, while I was blogging, I realized that, like, obviously you want to have it as perfect and as good as possible. But at the end, it's also about publishing something, right? So like the end, you say, okay, this is now what I want to put out. And then, well, you can still fix it if there's. So I have no idea how much time I put into that blog. It's definitely a lot. And it's not that I have more time at the moment with everything going on, but yeah, it's still a good thing to do. I'm sure it still takes like a couple of hours a week, I would say, to run the blog and do certain things. The way I do my blogs as well is not that I like write one every week, for example. It can be that in one day I write like 3 to 4 blogs, and then I release them over the next couple of weeks. If there's something, there might be something which is super urgent, which I really, I write this now and I want to get it out. That happens too. But yeah, I don't want to give up on the blog. Like I get a lot of like good feedback on it. I mean, obviously there are the numbers, like where you see the statistics, people are coming and you see like that pays off, especially if you blog for a very long time. But it's the not small things, but it's like the comments you get from time to time. I just had a comment on a PowerShell blog post from like 7 years ago. I know that specifically because the person wrote, "Hey, you wrote this 7 years ago and it's still valid. Thank you very much."
Okay, that's cool. Yeah,
and things like that, just like those make you keep going, right? There is, like, hey, like there's this. I helped another person, right? With this, I like with this blog I put out. It's not just for me, but it's like for someone else, and I helped hopefully like someone with that.
Yeah, you helped me, so please don't give it up.
yeah. It's the same with me. I think it was last year when I looked at the PowerShell 7 installation and under Linux and stuff like that. I think I ended up, you're Googling and then, okay, it's your blog, right? So
this is a funny one. I have to get credit to Steve, I think, for that one, who is like lead engineer, I think, for the PowerShell stuff right now.
Steve Lee, yeah, okay.
Yeah, because he put it out on Twitter. He was like, hey, I built this little one-liner you can run on Linux. Here's one for Windows. Yeah. And then it checks what version you're running, and then it installs it. And I was like, well, that's so good. It needs to, like, it cannot just live on a tweet. It needs to be somewhere. And so that's how it got there.
Okay, but it's really helpful. Absolutely. Okay, so here we have a shout out from Johnny Chips, where I think we can congratulate him on his new job at Microsoft.
Yeah.
Hey, John.
Thanks for the feedback. Very cool. So yeah, I think we're gonna kind of shift gear a little bit and go more towards PowerShell. And I think you already.
Yeah, sure. Sorry. So there are questions in the chat. So shall we?
Shall we put them to when we talk about the languages? I think that might be
okay.
helpful.
Yeah, sure.
What do you think?
Sure. No problem. Yeah, sure.
So because the question that we have here is kind of relates to what you already mentioned in the beginning. Like, what was your first PowerShell version you worked with? I think you
I think it was really PowerShell like one. I think that was the one. It was not that serious back then because again, I think there was not even remoting in that version. I can't really remember like all the things, but I got like fascinated by it because obviously Microsoft did a great job like saying, hey, this is what you need to learn. And back then I was like, well, I'm listening, right? And so it made a lot of sense. But I think with version 2, then the thing became really like at one point really useful. But yeah, I started with version 1. That was really the start of it. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Cool.
Okay. So, are you still using PowerShell in your job at Microsoft?
Oh yeah, yeah. I get that question often. I ask myself that a lot. But yes, absolutely. Like I really tend to like when I set up things. There's multiple things where I use it. Like think about I build a lot of demo environments, right? So I build out like installations and stuff like that, and usually I do that using PowerShell, right? I like try to automate also my processes. A lot of the things we show is done in PowerShell. So there's a lot of like things I like as a tool of PowerShell, and then there's also some interesting things going on, by the way, with PowerShell. It's not just about the language PowerShell itself anymore. It's really also like the shell experience which comes together, which I very much like. Even if I'm like, for example, running some CLI commands, I'm very often, or basically almost all the time, we run it in a PowerShell context, right? So then I get like some benefits from some of the features the team is doing. And I think Michael Green, who owns now PowerShell inside Microsoft, he's now the basically the feature, or not feature, the product owner of this. He has a couple of people obviously reporting to him. He explained that very well. Like in one of his talks, he was like, well, it's not just about like the language. The language is important and we're improving that constantly and working on that. But there's also another part which we want to make PowerShell more useful. And so for me personally, using that, I think I use it daily. I think I'm just trying to think of days where I don't use it. I mean, still with all the work I'm doing, I also use a lot of our Office products. Okay. Probably live in Outlook and Teams. Yeah, I mean, I think for like a lot of the tech work I'm doing, I use PowerShell.
Perfect. So like every day you're using PowerShell is a good day, right?
Oh yeah. It's definitely most of the time this is the fun days. Like these are really the fun days, the fun parts of it. Yeah, for sure.
Very cool. Do I have a next question, Markus? Where
it's your turn.
It's my turn. Oh my god.
Yeah, it's your turn.
Okay. So we have this question, and we're going to come to the questions that are in the chat because they relate to a question that we have later on. And one is, what was your most interesting PowerShell project so far? If there is one.
There are some. So I think so. There's the most interesting one, and there's probably the most useful one. The most useful was actually when I started and I teased that a little bit when I was working for that service provider. They basically brought me in as a Microsoft system engineer. So you have to think like the service provider, like they did web hosting, they did VM hosting and things like that. I think that was in 2009 I started there. And they did a pretty good job in automation, especially on the Linux and Unix side. And then in the Windows side, they also had some stuff, but like mostly done in VB-script. And so one of my first projects there was actually, and again, I think that was still the most useful there, was to build a SharePoint hosting. So that meant to like, hey, how do we design multi-tenancy for SharePoint? That was one thing, and do the architecture of that, but then also build the automation. So if a customer goes to our website, signs up for it, then something needs to happen, right? And what we did, I called it back then, I think we called it internally the PowerShell Druid. It was like kind of like a scheduled, like back then, again, you have to like mention it's like PowerShell version 2 or 3, something like that. And it was a scheduled task which run a PowerShell script and check the web service to see if there is a new task, which is kind of like we had that was XML format. And there was like, if there's a new task for you that can be create a SharePoint site, stop a SharePoint website, delete the SharePoint website, add a user to it, and things like that. So then the Druid would like read that XML file, that like XML structure, would use that object, and then basically run the necessary SharePoint PowerShell commandlets. And so that was kind of like there I learned a lot. I mean, I had no experience in coding at all, right? That was like, for me, that was like the first like where we actually learned like for each loops, if statements, and all that, right? So I learned a ton of stuff, also how to deal with web services, how to parse an XML file. PowerShell made this all pretty easy. I learned a little bit about error handling as well, which is always good. Yeah, that was, I think, the most useful one, and also fun. But then I remember like the one I had a lot of fun was actually setting up that was in the time with System Center and Hyper-V and all that. And there was this motion of Microsoft, like going to service providers and show them the solution to build a private cloud, or a hosting cloud or something like that. And we got asked as a partner to write some automation so they can do like these training days basically, and say, hey, like you need to bring a VM or a physical server with that size, and then you can run that, like you want to run an automation, and it sets up everything for you, right? So it sets up different System Center and there was a lot of work done already by Microsoft to do that, but it did miss like a little bit of work there. And so that was probably the most fun one, because we could then go out, do these one-day workshops, and at the end, like everyone had an installation of like this Windows Windows Azure Pack and System Center and Hyper-V and all that, and could basically play around with it. So that was fun too.
Okay, so that shows really also the versatility of PowerShell, right? And we have Chris here who also just commented like, yeah, VB script, okay, but it's so much easier if you're using PowerShell.
Feel you, Chris. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I am not sure if I guess there are still like customers out there. I mean, you know probably better than I do, like how much VB script there is still out there. But I am pretty sure there is still some.
There is, yeah.
It's not that. Yeah, absolutely.
Not that, but it's not that much. But there is still VB script out there. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Okay. Next question. It's your turn, Markus. Huh?
So, okay, what's your favorite PowerShell module?
That's a good one. So there's obviously like one, but my absolute favorite right now is like it's not necessarily. I think the module is PS Readline, I think called, but it's like a feature in that with predictive intelligence. Like that, this is just like I cannot work without it anymore. Since it doesn't preview, I install it and run it every time. I get to a machine where it's installed, I'm super annoyed. Because just like even if you use the history, it's great. So for those who don't know what that is, because you have,
do you want to show it, by the way?
Actually, it's a good plan. That's a really good plan. If you want to, yeah, let's do that. So yeah, here like I use obviously the Windows terminal. So usually it's already enabled here. So when as soon as I start typing, you will see what I mean. But let me quickly do one thing and hit F2 here. So when you want to achieve something, especially if you run the command not daily, you start writing, right? So if I want to do, let's say I want to create a new Azure VM. This also, by the way, works locally. So I know that it's new, or new AC group. And you can see here, so if I do new dash, you can see all the blue locations already, which are there. Everything in blue is just IntelliSense, right? To actually make sure, hey, this is what you would run to create, for example, a new Azure resource group. Then the cool thing is, I think you can hit Alt-A. Well, first you need to do new AC resource group. So it's now here. Just hit the arrow key. Sometimes I do things I don't even know what I actually do. It just happens automatically in my hands. So then you get the command, right, to create a new resource group in this example. And then the easy part, you can now hit Alt-A, and it switches to the different parameters. So you can say, okay, let's do ScriptRunner. And then I can basically hit Alt-A again. And then I can go and say I want to deploy that in different, let's do this, West EU, for example. And you can really do that, jump around. Now, the cool thing is, this is pretty useful. Again, if you do that in line, you can see that. But if I hit F2, I get this other view where I now suddenly, let's do a new, where I do get this list view. And this is the cool one. Now you can see a couple of things. Let me see if I zoom it on. You can see here the commands itself, right? So there's a list of commands. But here at the end of the line, you see where are they coming from. So by default, you have the history. So basically everything you already did run, that's why I get annoyed every time if it's not installed, because I just came to a system where I did run a couple of commands and I run a ton of other ones and I couldn't really remember. So I would need to go all the way up in the list. I could go into the history and all that and find that what I did run. But I ran so many other commands, it was just a pain. And with the history, it just takes okay, I can hit new dash, and then I know all the things where I did dash new. If I do then add more, get more specific, it will even go I can find all the other things. So that's great. But then we also have this this AI feature, basically, if you will, which is the AC predictor. And that is currently a feature I think we have just for the Azure module, but it goes at the same time you're typing, it goes against the Azure documentation and our telemetry and our data we have, and does give you some ideas of commands you're probably looking for, right? So if you can do, I think I tried that before. So if you do no AC, you'll see here, get some commands here. And I think it's, why does it not show for a virtual machine? That's interesting. But let's do storage account, for example. And then you can see here, get the commands for storage account, and then, that's the one. And then I can do, again, the old A thing and just switch around. So that is by far my current favorite feature, just because of how it helps me with, again, doesn't matter if I do something in Azure, on-prem, on my local machine, whatever I'm doing, this is super useful, right? So yeah, that's my favorite thing right now.
Yeah,
really, really cool. Yeah,
very cool, because this is so much better when it comes to the command line experience, right? It was already it's already helpful with knowing all the parameters and stuff like that, but this is just a few steps more, and for the interactive usage of PowerShell, that's really great.
And what you can see here, by the way, this is also very good. Look at this. Even if it's not PowerShell, even if that's using now the Azure CLI, that still helps me, right? Whatever I did in this console window in PowerShell, in the PowerShell itself, in the PowerShell shell, you can still see those, right? So that I think is just super awesome. Whatever you do, if I do create a folder or something, you can see here what I did before in my history tab, right? I can see that. If I do some variables, that's also super handy. If you need to look what had happened before. So yeah, it's just, again, I am a big fanboy of this.
For good reason. It's really a cool thing. Yeah, and I think it even works for Windows PowerShell, right? I think it's something that you could. It's backward compatible, I think.
So I remember. I think the history plugin works for Windows PowerShell, but the AC thing doesn't. Or maybe they fixed it now, or also shipped it there. Sometimes it's difficult for me to know exactly which one, but to be honest, I also don't run the Windows version that much anymore.
Yeah, sure.
I try to run PowerShell 7 as much as I can.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it does, because I just remember I used. You're probably right. I think especially for the history plugin, I just used it on a machine where there was Windows PowerShell, and I believe I installed it there.
Because I think I saw a demo from Jason Helmick where he showed it also with Windows PowerShell. Yeah, but as you said, you're obviously mostly PowerShell 7. I think, Markus, we would just skip the ISE versus VS Code question, because
yes.
But maybe going to the next one, which also relates then to the one that we got from the chat, with are you using other languages? Because we have Emushmer here. I don't know exactly how to say it. Which one is more useful? Java, C++, Python?
I could now make a couple of bad jokes about different languages, but
go ahead.
No, to be honest. So I think I saw a very interesting mention by, I think it was Scott Hanselman who did that, because he gets that question a lot, is from developers, what language should I learn, right? At the end, I would say it doesn't really matter. It's the one language which I think is most up to the job and task you want to do. It's really what also you enjoy most, right? There's especially Python and C++, they're really used in different contexts, right? And it's not necessarily okay, one is better than the other, but in general, but it's for specific tasks you would use a different language. I think most of the important parts is that you actually start learning one of these languages. It's funny that you did not mention any C#, for example, or PowerShell. It really at the end depends, right? I see a lot of starters now with Python to start doing work with that, especially at schools, for example, because it just gets you a couple of things you can do very easily. But then if you want to do some really high performance stuff, go into some real deep operating system things, C++, probably a good thing to do. Again, it really depends, and at the end, I think it comes down to personal preferences and what you need to achieve. I think that really is the point there. And important, to be honest, is just learn a language. I mean, they are different from each other, but if you get in that thinking of using different languages, it really helps. I mean, for me, PowerShell brought me into writing some code, right? And still, I would not consider myself a developer at all. But it really got me there from not doing anything with code to actually get some stuff done. And so yeah, I hope that answers the question a little bit, at least, because it's a hard question to.
Yeah. I think he or she also added that. I guess that was the task where they tested
today.
VLAN.
Yeah, that's interesting. I would need to ask my friend there to okay, what is especially if we work with Cisco things and stuff like that, what would be a useful thing. But to be honest, I remember I did some automation versus Cisco infrastructure using PowerShell. I cannot remember exactly what I was doing, but I remember I did some stuff and with PowerShell, and so that was fun too. I don't think there was some sort of an official PowerShell module, but you could work your way around it. Yeah.
Okay, very cool. So I guess we will again should shift gear a little bit and move towards the Azure topic. What do you think, Markus?
Yeah, sure. So first question from the Azure related topics. What is Azure Arc and why should I use it?
So in a very small sentence, like in a very small paragraph, like we have a lot of like customers using our Azure services and our Azure management technology to manage services running in Azure, right? And it's really designed to do these things at scale. It's really like improving. It does bring that cloud native experience. It's really the modern way of computing, if you will, what you can do. Now, customers are telling us, well, we don't just have things running in Azure, right? We have things which need to run on premises for various reasons, right? Can be data sovereignty, data privacy things, network connectivity scenarios where you don't have enough, like cannot have too much latency, or there is like you cannot have the dependency to the cloud. Like again, there's a ton of scenarios, and we could talk about the scenarios in general, but that request is now, okay, so how do I get all these benefits the cloud provides, like as not necessarily as a location itself, but actually like the management of the services, and bring these outside of Azure? And that is what where Azure Arc comes in. So that is really, Azure Arc really is the bridge which gets these resources outside of Azure. These can be like servers, can be Kubernetes clusters, databases, and so on. You can connect these to Azure, and we call that Azure Arc-enabled infrastructure. That allows us really to like also connect Azure Stack HCI clusters and VMware stuff, and then they show up in Azure as Azure resources, and then you can do some management tasks with that. The other part is Arc-enabled services. This is where a customer wants to use an Azure service, for example, let's say Azure SQL, web apps, functions, logic apps, and they want to use that on premises. That is like the other part of Azure Arc, where you can then deploy these on premises, or I should say even at other cloud providers, because not just limited to like on-premise locations and edge locations, really also like wherever you can actually deploy it, right? So that is, in a nutshell, in one sentence, Azure Arc brings Azure management and Azure services to on-premises, edge, and multi-cloud environments.
Okay,
that's kind of like the marketing tactic.
But actually, that kind of fits. Markus, so we have this question here coming from Layan. I think that's something we could maybe integrate here, because he is asking any challenges you face from customer side for adoption Azure Arc for on-premise and multi-cloud environment.
So one thing we learned is, I think one of the challenges we had was network connectivity. So obviously what we have, when you install, for example, the Azure Arc agent, everything is basically a little bit agent based. So you have an agent connecting to the Azure APIs over port 443, over HTTPS, like encrypted and so on. That's all so far so good. But if you think about scenarios where customers do have servers which cannot connect to the internet directly, for various reasons like security and doing that, we need to provide other options, right? And that was, I think, one of the challenges, which are, by the way, now like solved in these cases, where you can now use a proxy to do that, or you can also use something called private link, which allows you, if you have an Azure Express route or a VPN to Azure, you can leverage that connection through this to connect to the endpoints privately. And so that, I think, would be like one of the challenges we faced at the early stages, I think, which is now like addressed, which we like solving, which we're still also try to improve even. There's obviously other things we learn every day from customers, right? And we're happy to learn. But at the end, I think most of the customers I worked with, which are actually adopting Azure Arc, they're now like getting super happy about the different experience we are having, right? Like one thing, for example, is like server management in Azure Arc. When I show this, like I had this conversation with someone, like you can now manage your servers from anywhere, right? Doesn't matter where your server is. If it's Arc connected, it's connected to the Azure control plane. And if you log into the Azure portal or PowerShell or CLI or whatever, you can start managing that server in a secure way. And I brought this kind of like up is like, okay, well, one scenario for me was I was flying to the US in summer for a conference, and I wanted to prepare my demo environment and do a couple of things, screenshots and stuff like that. However, like some of the servers at home did not run anymore. So what I was able to do, like in that, like in the plane, you have like a little bit of internet connection, right? I actually say a little bit. I was actually able to log into the Azure portal and then start up the services from there without using a VPN or anything, and actually like do some stuff there. So I could manage my servers running at home from an airplane, right? Like somewhere in the world. So that I thought this is pretty cool. Like this is
definitely cool stuff. So we are using it to manage some of our VMware VMs for demo purposes. So really cool stuff.
Very cool.
Okay.
So, it's already 45 minutes. So, and we still have a number of questions. Maybe we have to skip a few of them, not to keep you busy too long.
There were some good questions. I like talking about these things.
So I think we talked a lot about business stuff, and now it's time to come to the fun stuff, I think.
But before we do that, should we cover this question that we got from a guy who calls himself Coffee?
I forgot. Sure.
Who actually he or she used our form actually to put in a question, and that is kind of a more, I guess, migration related question. It is we have lots of duplicate files found in our local network file drives. When we move to the cloud, this duplicate dilemma follows. What should we do?
Yeah, I love that question. It's actually a good one. To be honest, I remember, like, I haven't really worked with I'm assuming he's talking still about file servers.
I think so. Local network file drives. Yeah. So
okay.
Okay.
Well, so on a nutshell, like if that's user-based things, if it's like, okay, these are user files and things like that, documents, so on, I would highly recommend checking out M365 and then like use OneDrive and SharePoint and all that stuff and host these things there. Now that doesn't necessarily solve the duplicated files issue, but just in general, that would be my guidance. If you move things to the cloud, look at these options, right? Because again, they will make your end users so much more happy and solve a lot of challenges. I know that there is I remember, I do not say I know, but I remember there was some sort of a storage feature in Windows Server where it allows you to do like find files and do classifications of these files. And I'm pretty sure that also had an option to find duplicated files. I'm pretty sure about that. It's a very old thing.
Okay.
I think it's 2012, probably even older than that. But I think there was something like that. So if it's hosted on a Windows file server, that's definitely something I would check out. Other than that, if you want to run, I also don't know, did we ask the question if he moves that to the cloud, or does he just talk about general?
No, it's when we move to the cloud. So it's kind of the idea is bringing this data to the cloud.
Okay. Yeah. I think that would be something I would consider from the administrative while it's still running on that Windows server. Then go with that tool behind it and figure out what data you still have.
Yeah.
Again, haven't worked with that for a long time, but I remember that something like this existed.
Yeah. Okay. So this could be something to kind of deduplicate stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what the other option is. Like, if you're running that file server on-prem and you keep it on-prem, we have Windows Server deduplication built in. So, like, if it's a data drive or something, you can actually run deduplication that. But as soon as you move these files to the cloud, I mean, then you're really moving the files, right? You use probably Azure File Sync, for example, to put it on Azure File Share. And then there's we will do some stuff in the background, but not necessarily like the deduplication stuff.
Yeah.
So for the migration, by the way, I would highly recommend, if you really want to migrate it not to OneDrive or SharePoint, which I would recommend, if you have the need to migrate it to a file share running in Azure, Azure File Sync is definitely a good tool to look at in general.
Okay, cool. So, but now I would say, Markus, it's time for the fun stuff, right?
I mean, that question was fun.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, absolutely. And I think while I learned a lot already. So that's really cool. That's really cool. So what would be the first question, Markus, in this area?
Okay, so let's start with the first question. What are you doing in your spare time? If you have spare time.
Yeah, of course I have spare time. So there's a couple of things. Now with my spare time, what I really enjoy is like spending time with my little baby girl we just had a year ago. I think that is like takes probably the most time out of the like free time, like where I want to enjoy, spend time with family and friends. I think that is something I realize now even more how important it is, and time gets short. So I really enjoy that, not just with her, but like also in general, family and friends. The other things I'm doing is I love to play paddle tennis. I'm not sure, or paddle, it's called paddle. It's not stand-up paddling. It's like basically a mix, for those who don't know what it is. It's kind of like a mix between squash and tennis. So it looks like a small tennis court, but it has glass walls behind you, so the ball can bounce off. And so that's super cool. I really enjoy playing that. It's always 2 against 2. There's some really good, like if you want to know more about it, check out on YouTube. Just
okay, I never heard about this. So there's still a net in between the players?
Yep,
or?
There's still a net, absolutely, yes. And then you have like this glass and this cage thing going around it.
Oh.
And like the only thing you need to do, if you play the ball over the net, it needs to hit the floor first, and then it can go against everything, and the others need to like bring it back, obviously. And with that, it gets very intense because again, and it's pretty easy to learn. I think it's obviously there are some really there's like the top skilled players, which is crazy. Which if you look at them, it's crazy. But it's like you can have some sort of fun, right? Like very early on. Like if you're like 4 friends together and you start playing that, after a couple, like after 2 or 3 times playing, it's really getting like, hey, this is actually pretty nice, and you get some good balls and stuff like that. So yeah, it's I think it's one of the fastest growing, if not the fastest growing sport, I think right now. It's very very high in especially countries like Spain, also South America. That's where it's especially, but I think it's number 1 growing in Switzerland, I think, as well, with others, because obviously it's not that big yet, so that's like why it can grow very fast. But there's a couple of things coming up with that, a lot of centers now, so that is one thing I enjoy very much.
Just never heard of it, just Googled it, and the records are looking really interesting, so they're looking funny, so they're looking a bit bigger like table tennis rackets.
It's they're not like these tennis rackets. They're like, as you said, like flat. They're like that's why they're paddles, right? So and that's pretty. Again, for me, it was like I did not play tennis. I played badminton, but that works completely differently. It's still a racket sport, but it's like completely different from paddle. But yeah, it's I can only highly recommend for people to try it out. It's really becomes really fun. We have a lot of like former soccer players who play it. Like it's really like trending right now. So
interesting. So I actually also didn't hear about it, but maybe Markus, we should look if this could be another ScriptRunner company.
Yeah, sure.
Thing
next team event.
A team event we're trying out. Yeah. Okay. Oh, very cool. So so there is one question we have been asked to ask from various people. The topic starts with a C and it ends with an at. so it's the cat story. The question is, when does Easy get a cat? I think it's something that goes on for quite a while on Twitter and on other places, right?
Oh, absolutely. I get that question like all the time. Like it was really hyped. I think like at one point it was when one of the Microsoft Ignite live streams they were asking that question, and I think then they like it went just like crazy. But yeah, so far again because we have now a little human as well. Like that kind of like is not so we don't have we took off the cat at the moment off the table, I think. Well, at least I did. Like I know that Izzy thinks differently about the cat,
Okay.
for sure. But yeah, right now it's all about the little human, and we will see.
Yeah.
We will see. Like to be honest, to be like now coming a little bit more serious. The thing is just like when you travel, like especially we do, and like also the where we live right now, I don't think the cat, like we want to let the cat out right of the house, so it can go and come, and so that would probably not be an option right now. But like yeah, I mean I have nothing against cats. I also want to say that I love cats, so that's a good thing, I guess. But yeah, it's just not right at the moment.
Yeah. So I guess this So I guess this topic will stay on for a little for the future. So and it will come back again as people asking, but it's like a
for sure it's not gone, right? As long as we have it, like people can ask me about it. So that's
excellent. Yeah, and then we have another question. Should I take it because it kind of relates also to you, Markus? What do you think?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you do it.
So okay, so as Thomas, you are married with Izzy, right? So
yes.
So so the question here is, it's a question from us. You are married for quite some time. Do you have any tips for a freshly married man? I don't want to mention Markus as being the one, but he is.
So, congratulations!
Yeah, 3 weeks ago.
Oh wow, congratulations! The fun part is, should I tell you that I'm like we just married? Like it's like I got a little bit confused when it said like a long time married. I was like, well, it's for us, it's just a month. so
well, it could feel like a long time, but it probably doesn't.
So I don't know if I have so many tips right now for you. I think my thing, and I do that wrong also often, is like enjoy it like that.
Yeah.
I think at the end it's like there's so much good to it, right? It's like it's always makes at the end it makes me happy, and it's like I said, like because we're traveling like a lot apart. Like so she does some work things and I do some work things, and then we don't see each other. So I really like then especially I miss her especially. So yeah, I don't think I have much tips on that side. I don't think I can help you for the long term there. I also need to learn. But if you have something,
maybe.
No. Enjoying it. I think it's the best tip, and I really do.
Maybe you could start a special interest group together on this. Maybe something like this.
I think we can have some comments in the chat, maybe from people who have a little bit more experience on this.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, let's see if we get some good tips here. Okay, cool. So I guess the last would be like, okay, talking about a little bit about what's next with Thomas. Is there anything we can expect in the future?
If I only would know, if I only would have something big to announce or something like that. Unfortunately, I don't have anything like a big major change. What I'm trying to do is keep on doing the things I'm doing. I'm gonna play a lot more with some awesome new technology. That's kind of like one of the things I want to do, and obviously share that again with all the people and get their opinions on it. I'm really right now. I'm planning the next week. That's how far I'm planning. I'm looking forward for my dev kit to arrive and some other Microsoft technology things to play around with. Personal life. I mean, there's like baby, there's marriage, like all that, like check, right? Check. So no, I think I just try to keep a little bit on that fun, right? And get a little bit better in paddle. That's a goal I would set myself as well. Learn a couple of things I haven't learned before, especially some like soft skills as well. I think that becomes very important. and just enjoying the ride. I mean, this, like doing these things like this, for example, or talking with people, I really enjoy that, and I want to keep doing that for quite some time, right? So, that's basically it. I wish I would have something big,
that's
mind-blowing
awesome.
to announce, but
Awesome. I think that actually brings us to the last question, Markus, right?
Yeah. So, what are your plans for Christmas?
we haven't decided yet. I'm still up for staying at home. That's my thing. Just have a quiet time at home, enjoy
Yes.
like the time off, really quiet, shutting down, no action. Really getting like joy time with family and friends, and just relax a little bit in that sense. That's I think the plan from my side. However, you obviously need to check out what is going on, like especially with my wife's family being all over Europe. It's like obviously she also wants to like be with her family. So usually what we did, we traveled at different places as well. I think for this year, I think everyone would be like, hey, would be nice to be home. But we'll see. That's kind of like our Christmas plan so far. I'm still like the only thing I might spin my head around, to be honest, is like, what do we have for Christmas as dinner? Like that's
an important topic. Oh yeah, yes.
That's what keeps me awake at night. That's
like nightmare. Like ooh. Okay, very cool. So this brings us really to this is the end of the questions that we got. So it was really great talking with you, and also thanks for everybody who joined and who asked questions. It was really fun.
Yeah, thank you.
So thanks a lot again for everybody who joined in. Thanks Thomas. Thanks Markus. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
And see you in the next Ask Me Anything session.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Thomas. Bye-bye.
Bye.